Brisbanen Suomiradiossa puhutaan tänään Scandinavian Film Festivalista. Skandileffoja voi katsella useammassa Australian isossa kaupungissa 9. elokuuta saakka. Meillä on nyt Zoomin kautta mahdollisuus toivottaa lämpimästi tervetulleeksi Norjan saamelainen elokuvaohjaaja Ole Giæver, joka äärettömän liikuttava ja tärkeä elokuva Let the River Flow, Ellos Etna oli festarin avajaiselokuva. Let the River Flow sijoittuu 70-luvun lopun ja 80-luvun alun Finnmarkin ja Altajoelle, jolle suunnitellaan vesivoimalaa. Kyseessä on tositapahtumiin perustuva elokuva. Hankkeen ja veden alle oli joutumassa kokonainen saamelaiskylä. Saamelais- ja ympäristöaktivistit protestoivat hanketta lakiteitse, mutta myös kansalaistottelemattomuuden keinoin. Järjestettiin nälkälakko Oslossa ja pääsyä työmaalle estettiin. Elokuvassa näitä tapahtumia seurataan saamelaistaustainen Esterin kautta. Ester saa opettajan pestin altassa, eikä hän halua paljastaa aluksi identiteettiään kollegoilleen opettajan huoneessa, ja hyvästä syystä. Serkkunsa mukana Ester sitten löytää kuitenkin itsensä protestijoukoista, ja hän alkaa tutkia sen kautta omaa ja perheensä identiteettiä, kulttuuria ja saamelaista historiaa. Ole, I would like to warmly welcome you to the Brisbanen Suomiradio, Brisbane Finnish radio. And to start with, I'd like you to please tell us where you are now and what can you see out of the window, if there are any windows around you.
Well, I'm actually sitting in like the basement in my home, which is just outside of Oslo, the capital of Norway. And there's only a small window here, and I can barely see the top of some trees.
Okay, beautiful. And I can see a projector behind you, so this is where you work, is that right?
Yeah, it's a part of the work to watch films. So this is like the basement is turned into kind of a home cinema kind of thing. So it's yeah, that's true.
Excellent. Your latest film, Let the River Flow, is such an incredibly moving and important and sometimes very painful film about the recent history of Sami people. And it doesn't really apply just to Norway, but all over Scandinavia and Finland as well. What has the response been at home, and has it started any new conversations in Norway?
Yeah, definitely. The response has been really good. It came out in cinemas in Norway in February. And I think it gave a spark to some really important discussions and debates. And barely a month later, a new kind of demonstration started, which was referred to as the Fosen case, where there's a windmill park that is built in the middle of a reindeer herding area of some Sami families, and it's put there illegally. And the Supreme Court in Norway has ruled that this is violating the rights for the Sami reindeer herders to exercise their culture. And I was told by some of the activists that the film contributed to give a momentum to these demonstrations, which was the biggest demonstrations, Sami demonstrations since the Alta case, which the film is about.
Oh, fantastic. So your film is really inspiring the next generation, or the kind of a new movement. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think they were already very inspired, and there's a big, strong awareness amongst the young Sami people today. I think that the film was only a small contribution, but it sort of helped to give a momentum to, and maybe inspire some people to see what can happen if people actually come physically together and demonstrate against things that are not righteously done towards the Sami people.
Great. And what inspired you to create this film now? Is it something that you had been thinking about for a while already, or was there any particular event that really put the wheels in motion?
Well, actually, the two films I did prior to this one was more based on personal experiences, and I wanted to make a film that could somehow contribute to a more to discussion or debates concerning our society today. And then these events came to my mind very easily because my parents and I as a kid were living in these territories when the demonstrations were going on, and my father was a part of the demonstrations. He actually sat on the board of what was called the People's Movement Against the Dam. So, initially it was thought that the kind of collective mobilization and the solidarity spirit of that time, that period in the late 70s, and especially in Norway with this case, was something to be inspired by today. Because I think a lot of these debates and discussions are so fragmented by the way social media works. And the next day is like a new topic or a new issue. There are, of course, some exceptions with the Black Lives Matter and Me Too campaign, but often I find that it's very fragmented. And I wanted for us and the new generation to be inspired by the power of the people when we are coming together. And then when I started doing research, I was more aware of how important this case was for the fight for Sami rights and for the Sami people. And it's actually referred to as a turning point in new Sami history in the fight for Sami rights.
Yeah. The main character in your film, Esther, experiences a kind of powerful homecoming or awakening of her Sami identity. And there's also this almost requirement to take sides. You can't not choose in the film and at that time. So is that something you can personally relate to, or is it something you've witnessed happening around you?
I think what Esther experiences with, like, at first hiding who she is and where she comes from, hiding her Sami identity. I think a lot of people, especially from northern Norway, where I'm also from, many people can relate to. And I also, going into this film project, I also was inspired to search for my Sami roots, and I found out that there's a lot of Sami ancestors in my family, but I wasn't told. So because of the inflicted shame upon the Sami people, a lot of people were hiding, especially along the coast of northern Norway. So this is what Esther goes through in the film, and I can in some, even though I think it affects Esther way more than it did to me, because she kind of grew up in this, the prejudices, the discrimination. I was on the other side of that growing up as a Norwegian, but like standing in the middle of the bridge between two cultures, I can identify with in some part. And I think everybody, even though they are not Sami or have like these identity issues, have experiences what it's like to not dare or not being allowed to be yourself. And that's really what Esther is fighting for on a personal level. Of course, she's fighting for the river and for Sami rights, but she's also fighting for her own right to be who she is. And that, I think, many people can identify with. Yes,
I think you've approached all the subjects of this film, because I think there is a magnitude of subjects that you're touching upon, and you've looked at everything from multiple angles, and you've quite successfully portrayed the complexity that's involved on many levels in this film. Like there are tensions between the Sami and the non-Indigenous residents of Alta, racism, distance between decision makers in Oslo and people who live up north, different generational experiences of Sami people who've been subject to some policies in the past, such as being unable to speak language, or children being taken to residential schools and so on, and the exhaustion from trying to keep your culture alive and your language alive, your identity alive, when it means you have to constantly fight. That was what came through from the film, as well as the different opinions excuse me, within the Sami community itself. So not everybody agrees. I really thought you made it so brilliantly appear, all these different levels and complexities that exist on that personal level and on societal level, and so on. The film covers a lot. How was it making this film with the actors who all may have come from quite different kinds of backgrounds as well?
Wow, it was really great experience. A lot of the actors that I had the pleasure of working with had their own stories. A lot of them had similar stories to mine or to Esther's, that they knew they were Sami or it wasn't spoken about in the family. I met actors who had families that were divided because some siblings wanted to kind of take back their Sami roots, some didn't, and they were like, no, we are not Sami. But then, so I met a lot of actors who dealt with these issues on different levels, which of course also inspired the work with this film. And it felt, even though these events happened 40 years ago, it very much felt like we were making a contemporary story. So I think still a lot of these issues are going on, and people are still many people are still trying to take back what at some point in history was taken away from them. Yeah, it was great. And especially, of course, the work with Ella Marie Hetta Isaksen, the lead actress, who's very engaged in Sami policies, and also was one of the front figures in the Fosen case, the recent case this year against the windmills. Her kind of view upon these issues was also inspiring the development of the script and how we approach the making of the film.
How about the local community? Where was the film filmed? Was that in place in Alta and around there?
Yeah, it was mostly filmed on the actual locations where the events took place. And most of the time we were really welcomed by the local community, but you could still feel that there's still some tension left from the case, because the local community in Alta were divided. Some people were for the building of the dam, and some people were against. And of course, also the Sami issue was very controversial at that time, and still is. Some people felt that they lost the battle for the river because it turned into a fight for Sami rights instead, which gave the government the opportunity to make like a horse trade for it. Like, we can give you Sami rights, but then we will take the river. And that's very unfair, I think, to put like those two things up against each other. But we could also feel that within the local community of Alta, there were some people who were still bitter for how it ended and how the case like turned into a case for Sami rights. And then I could feel that maybe they didn't want to let us into their house or wherever we wanted to ask for the opportunity to come in.
Would you like to share a single most memorable moment from when you were filming, and also maybe the most difficult one? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Wow, I think I can start with the most difficult one, because that's I think it's what you remember the best. The most difficult scenes, I would say, to film is not the emotional scenes, because then you are really prepared and you're very focused. And I was so lucky to work with so talented actors. So I think the more emotional scenes, for those who will see the film, I think like Esther's relationship with the boathouse, there are some very emotional scenes. Those actually went quite good. It was not so difficult because you were so well prepared for it. But the most difficult scenes were the scenes with a lot of extras, the big demonstration scenes. And I'm very much used to doing low-budget films. And then it's like turning a little rowboat when you want to change the camera angle. You're like turning just a little small rowing boat. But with this case, it was like turning a cruise ship, because all the 100 extras had to kind of move places, and you had to switch around, and it was... yeah, it was very hard. So I remember that very well. And actually, maybe the best memory is actually when doing these scenes, because there was this moment in the middle of the night when we were doing, it was some of the last big demonstration scenes, when the police are arriving, and we had 200 extras. We had a little break, and this was the last night we were shooting the film. And then the sky cleared, and the Northern Lights came out.
Amazing.
And it was really magical, and it was like, wow. And we felt like that we were kind of, it was like a good omen, if you know what I mean. like somebody like taking care of the film and making sure that everything was going to be all right. So yeah, I think in one day I probably had the most difficult and the best kind of experience making this film.
Oh, that's very beautiful. Are you working on a new film already, and will we hear some Sami language spoken again?
I hope definitely there will be Sami language spoken again. In the process of making this film, I learned, or at least I tried to learn the Sami language. So with my new Sami friends, I'm trying to speak Sami, and still, of course, have a lot to learn. But my next film will not be like a specific Sami film. There might be Sami actors or so, but it's a film that has the working title "The Parents Meeting," and it's like a dark comedy, very claustrophobic. It's supposed to be like in real time, and the parents meeting in a feature film is approximately the same amount of time. And it's like a criticism of new public management way of structuring the school system today, but also with a lot of humor to it.
Yeah, and no big crowds. For the last question, for the Finnish listeners, I know many want to know if you've already seen Aki Kaurismäki's Fallen Leaves.
I haven't yet. I'm looking forward to it. I've not seen that one, but one of my favorite films is like I think it's called Drifting Clouds or something in English.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So that film is one of my favorite films of all time. So I'm very fond of Aki Kaurismäki, but I'm still looking forward to seeing his latest one.
Well, we'll wrap up this time now. Thank you so much for all your time, Ole, and we're really looking forward to seeing your next movie as well. And I know a lot of us, your film actually premieres tomorrow at the time of recording. So a lot of us are really looking forward to seeing your current movie as well. And let all the rivers flow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.